congruent triangles is very similar to what we've done before. So basically in this section what we do is state ways the triangles are congruent. So state one of those things that you use above. State one of those ways you can make the triangles congruent, or show that they're congruent. And the big one is planning a proof. Now, what I need you guys to understand is this. Like, let's say we had, let me draw two triangles. Let's say we had A, B, C, D, and E. So let's say we had these two triangles, and we were given that AB is congruent to BE. Okay, which I'm going to mark on here. And that angle C is congruent to angle, yeah?
Is that DE or BE?
BE.
Oh.
So we're saying also this angle is congruent to angle D. So maybe the question is, how can we prove that angle A and angle E are congruent? So eventually we want to say that those two angles are congruent. The first step one is to try to prove the triangle's congruent. Because once you prove the triangles are congruent, then you can say, yep. Then you can say any corresponding parts are congruent. So your first move is to say, alright, I want to prove the triangle is congruent, and then once I do that, I can say the corresponding parts are congruent. So, how do I want to go about proving that these two triangles are congruent? Yep.
First, well, you just want step one. What is that?
Yeah, so, yeah.
Given.
The given is AB is congruent to BE.
Okay.
And angle C is congruent to angle D. So, if we want to prove the triangles are congruent, so what do we do? The angle symbol.
Well, the first thing you have to do is the given.
So AB is congruent to BE. That's given. What else?
And then angle C is congruent to angle D.
That's also given. Now, what last piece of information can we say that will help us prove these triangles congruent? Yes.
Angle B is congruent to angle D.
Perfect. Except we want to say ABC maybe.
Okay.
Is congruent to angle EBD. And why is that?
Because it's vertical angles.
Good. So vertical angles are congruent.
I don't understand how it's vertical angles.
Triangles are the two
They're right across from each other. This one and this one we're talking about, they're right across from each other.
Oh.
So once you say something I'm going to mark that on here. I'll mark it in blue color so you know that this is what I proved. Oh, well, I didn't need 2 lines, but that's alright. Oh yeah, I did. So once I mark that they're congruent, now, can I say the 2 triangles are congruent?
Yes.
Yes, so I'll say triangle ABC is congruent to triangle EBD. Now remember, you want to be careful. We use ABC and then EBD because the A and the B have to be next to each other and the E and the B have to be next to each other because their measurements are congruent. So once we say that, what's the reasoning for this? Out of all the 5 reasonings we just discussed, which one is this?
Angle,
Angle, side. So angle, side. It's going to be one of the ones with 2 angles. And since the side isn't in between, it'll be angle, side. Since the side is not in between. Yes.
Theorem or apostrophe?
What?
Is that theorem or apostrophe?
Angle, side?
Yeah.
You can just write AAS.
Oh, okay.
And then once you have this, now we can say, actually you could write it down in the proof. The whole point was to say angle A is congruent to angle E, and Y congruent parts of triangles are congruent. Congruent parts of triangles are congruent. I just read it as CPTC, but it means congruent parts, actually it should be CPCTC. Congruent parts of congruent triangles are congruent. So once you prove the triangles are congruent, you can prove that those 2 parts of the triangles are congruent.